Greetings, my scattered brothers and sisters in the Lord. Trust you know the Lord is with you wherever you find yourself scattered today, and that you know that His presence with you is more than enough for whatever you might face today. We are joining Jesus in Mark chapter 10, verse 32, and Jesus is on His way up to Jerusalem. And the disciples are with Him and others are with Him. And it says those who are with Him, they were amazed, and those who followed behind, they were afraid. And then Jesus began to pull His disciples aside again and announce to them what was going to happen to Him, that they were going up to Jerusalem. The Son of Man was going to be handed over to the chief priests and the scribes, and they were going to sentence Him to death and hand Him over to the Gentiles, and they were going to spit on Him and mock Him and crucify Him. And 3 days later, He was going to rise. And there's a few things that are interesting about this. One, those who were with Him were amazed. Now, they all were believing at this point in the gospel that Jesus is the Christ, that He's the Messiah, that He's the one who's going to usher in God's kingdom. And so they're amazed that this is really happening because, according to the tradition, when the Messiah brought the kingdom, He was going to go to Jerusalem. And so they're believing Jesus is the Christ, and they're on their way to Jerusalem, and they're amazed that they're going to get to see the kingdom of God come. Now, there are those who are following and they're afraid. And even though they're afraid, they are still following. And that's impressive. And I don't know what they're afraid of, but my guess is that they've seen enough conflict with Jesus and the Pharisees, and they're believing that Jesus coming as the king, it's going to mean major change. And that change is likely going to be painful. And so I'm guessing that they're afraid of how difficult it's going to be, how painful it's going to be. And yet, they keep on following. And the fear of conflict isn't stopping them. They're still following Jesus on the way to Jerusalem. And then Jesus begins to teach the disciples what's going to happen to Him. And sometimes we get hung up on this word, what's going to happen to Him, like Jesus is just a victim, that He's doing good and bad stuff happens to Him, and He's a victim. He's just kind of a martyr that gets crucified. But we need to realize that all along here, Jesus is teaching that this is what He's going to do. He's making the choice to go to Jerusalem, even though He knows what's going to happen. He's making the choice to give His life as a ransom and as a sacrifice, as an atoning sacrifice for sin. So Jesus is not just the victim, He is the victor, to quote my son-in-law. And so just realize that Jesus is not a victim. He is intentionally going to Jerusalem to give His life. Now, wherever we find ourselves scattered today, what's our takeaway? Well, one, if we follow Jesus, people are going to be amazed at how God works in our lives, just as they were amazed that through Jesus and going to Jerusalem, the kingdom was coming. But there's also going to be some scary stuff happen, and there'll be some conflict, and there'll be some change, but keep on following. And then finally, never give in to being the victim because we follow Jesus. Yeah, stuff will happen to us, stuff that won't be fun, stuff that won't be good, stuff that will be painful, kind of cross-like painful. But never give in to playing the victim because we're following the victorious one. And as we follow the victorious one, His victory will be ours as well. So God bless, have a great day, and follow Jesus. Take up your cross and follow Him. God bless.